Hey everyone, it's Andrew. In the last tutorial, we set up a basic XGrid on a new level, and in this one we're going to take a look at some of the different zoning features that we have available to you through the framework. We can find these zones by navigating to the main folder, going to the grid folder, and then clicking on zones. The first zone that we'll take a look at is a null zone, which will allow you to carve out areas in the grid that you don't want units to go to. So let's take a look at how it works. It's pretty simple. We're just going to drag a null zone actor from our folder out onto the level. And as we can see, it's basically just a little volume. There's a little, square there that you can see. And we're just going to have it overlap with the cells that we don't want units moving through. So something like this. That looks pretty good. It's overlapping these 4 cells. And the second thing we're going to want to do with the null zone is we'll click on it and we'll go to its details panel. And we want to make sure that we select the grid from our level here in the default values. So go ahead and save and we'll hit play, simulate. And if we scroll over our unit, we'll see that these 4 cells that the null zone was overlapping with are now disallowed. So neither player nor the AI units are going to be able to pass through these cells now. Okay, so the second type of zone that we're going to take a look at is the terrain zone. So let's go ahead and grab one and drag it out onto the grid. As we can see, it kind of looks like a null zone, but if we look in the details panel, we'll see that we can actually specify a terrain type for this particular zone. So for this example, let's just go ahead and select weeds, and we'll go ahead and save that. We'll hit play, and if we go into full screen mode so we can see a little better, we'll see that the area that zone is overlapping with, if you look in the upper left hand corner, now has a movement penalty of -1. So if we were to move our character onto that cell and wait for the AI to take a turn, and we right click, we can see that our terrain status effect has now switched to this movement -1. We can see that our move speed has decreased from 7 to 6. And if we count the number of cells that this unit can move, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, we can see that it's actually had an impact on this unit's ability to move around the grid. When you move off of a terrain, it's going to get rid of whatever terrain status effect you had. We'll go over how to add different types of terrain to this little enumeration list later. You can create your own custom effects and custom terrain zones with different advantages and disadvantages, but we'll do that in a later video. We're just trying to get the basics of zoning in this one. So the last zone that we'll take a look at is the transform zone. We can go ahead and drag one of those out. And basically, this is just going to allow us to reposition any overlapping cells in the grid. So we can, like I said, we can reposition them, we can scale them up and make them bigger, or we can give them a rotation. For example, we might want to do this if there is a slope in our level geometry and we want the cells to attune to that. We can give it a X, Y, and Z rotation in addition to changing its position or its scale. Let's just do a basic example. Let's go ahead and get rid of this transform zone really quickly, and we'll go to our geometry tab. We can drag a simple box out, and let's just lower it down a little bit. And what we'll do is we'll try and make it so that the cells in this area of the grid appear on top of the box. So if we hit it right now, and we can see that I'll kind of zoom over here a little bit for you in full screen. We can see that the cells are currently underneath the level geometry. If we want them to, appear on top of that, we can go ahead and use one of these transform zones. So let's go back to the editor, and I'm going to hide this box brush really quickly, and we'll go ahead and grab a transform zone. So since this is a pretty basic example, let's just go ahead and take the position, the Z position here, and we're going to increase it by 80 centimeters. The other thing about transform zones is that when we're using them, we don't want to use just one to cover many cells. We actually want one transform zone for each cell. And this has to do with the way that the zones are interacting with the relationship between the cells on the grid. We can sometimes get unwanted distortions if we just use one transform zone for many cells. So what we can do is we can just copy and paste the one that we have, and then now we have two, and we'll copy and paste those two and drag those two down here. We can go ahead and save, and let's take a look at what this has done. Alright, so it looks like it was pretty successful. We now have these cells being elevated, and we can see that they're clearly on top of this little box right now. And we can actually we can move up on top of the box. It shouldn't affect, you know, your ability to move along the grid. All right, so the last thing that I wanted to mention really quickly is that if you make a change to the grid blueprint, if you're you know, expanding the framework and you want some to implement your new ideas, and you make a change to the grid blueprint, let's just say I don't know, I will print something out here. So I'm making a modification. We'll just print hello, and I compile the grid and I run it again. What we'll notice is that our zones are no longer working. They're now referencing the previous version of the grid since we've changed it. What we're going to want to do to fix that is really simple. We just open up the zones that we have. We'll open up each one of these zones, and we'll just recompile them. And once we've recompiled them, they'll be updated with the latest version of the grid variable, and we'll see that our zones are now working once again. See, we still have our null zones over here, our little terrain zone that we added over here, and our transform zones are also still working. So that's it for this tutorial. I hope you guys found it helpful, and we'll see you in the next one, where we'll be talking about how to add a new character unit into the grid. That's all for now. Take care. Bye-bye.